Shalom, my name is Omri. I was born and raised in a secular kibbutz in Israel. If you want to know exactly where it is, it's located 10 minutes southeast of Mount Carmel, where Elijah actually slew the prophets of Baal, and 10 minutes drive, of course, northwest of Mount Megiddo, Armageddon. The name of the kibbutz is Ramat HaShofet. Now, there's over 300 different kibbutzim in Israel, and kibbutzim used to be based on pure communism, not what became out of China or Russia. But the motto behind the kibbutz was everybody give as much as they can and receive as much as they need. Pretty much like how we read the early disciples used to have it in the book of Acts. Now, since it was a secular kibbutz, God was never really part of my upbringing. But however, when I look back, somehow I always had some sort of faith in God. And the reason I believe that is whenever we studied the Bible in the kibbutz, we never studied it as the living word of the living God, but just as a history of the Jewish people. Somehow I always loved the same people that the Bible loved, like, for instance, King David. Going out through the kibbutz, growing up there, I just did like what everybody else in Israel do, and what we do after high school, we all go to the army. It's compulsory. And what people in Israel do as they finish their military service, they go and travel around the world. I left Israel on the 26th of November 1996, where I bought myself a ticket around the world. Went from Israel to Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, and was meant to continue from there to Fiji, Tonga, Hawaii, the US, and back to Israel. And the grand plan of my trip was just, I didn't know what it was that I wanted to do in my life as I finished my military service. And I was hoping that on my travels, I will find out what it was that I really wanted to do in my life. On my 27th birthday, the 10th of June, 1997, I landed in Christchurch, New Zealand. Well, first, just listen to the name Christchurch. But did you know that Christchurch is the furthest most city on the face of the globe from Jerusalem? Well, I didn't know that either. But if you remember the last word that Messiah spoke before he was ascended into heaven, recorded in Acts 1:8, he said to the disciples, "But you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you shall be my witnesses, starting from Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, and unto the outermost parts of the earth." Now, if you start from Jerusalem, literally, once you get to Christchurch in New Zealand, you're literally at the end of the earth. If you continue, actually, you're already on your way back. And as I said, it was on my 27th birthday. And 2 months later, through the bold witness of a gentle woman, I came to faith. And the way it went about, it was like this. I arrived to this seaside resort town in the North Island of New Zealand called Paihia in the Bay of Islands. And I stayed in this hostel, and just across the street, just to the other side of the road, every time I walked to town, every time I walked back, there was just another hostel that just drew me like a magnet. It's just the house looked artistic and reminded me of a hostel that I stayed in while I was in the South Island, in which I really, really liked. And after a few days, I decided, you know what, Omri, just check out from this hostel and go and check into this cool-looking artistic hostel on the other side of the street. Now, and this is what I did. Now, just a year, as I shared with you, I left Israel the 26th of November 1996, and just a year before that, on November 4th, 1995, just been now recently 20 years since that event, Isaac Rabin was the Israeli prime minister, and he was assassinated by an Orthodox Jew in the name of God, because he wanted to sign a peace treaty with the Palestinians and giving back land for peace. And it had a tremendous effect on me. And I guess on everyone else in Israel also. But when I went into this hostel with my backpack on, and I rang the bell, and there was a counter there with a curtain behind it, and this woman came behind the curtain. She looked at me and she said, "You're an Israeli." And I said, "How did you know that?" And she said, "I know that you're an Israeli. You're God's chosen people. You're very special people to God." And I thought to myself, oh no, where did I get myself into? But you see, I was a very cheap Israeli traveler, and as I was talking to her, I was asking if there was something I could do in the hostel in return for free accommodation. And I could see by the response of this woman That while there was nothing for her to offer me to do, I could also see that she will do whatever it takes to find something. She went something like this: what can I find this guy to do? And there was a boat outside. She said, you can paint the boat. And because it was winter, it was August 97, she said, you can also chop some wood for the fireplace. So I was happy I don't have to pay for accommodation. Now, this woman was genuinely interested with people. That's why she ran the backpackers. And a few days later, she came to me and said, come, Omri, talk to me. I want to understand how you tick. I want to understand how you think. And she kept on saying all the time, you're God's chosen people. You're God's chosen people. Now, every Jewish person you will ever meet in your lifetime, we all understand and we all know, we heard it, that we're God's chosen people, but we all translate the chosen people to mean the better people. And at that point in time, I decided to tell her the story of Yitzhak Rabin, Isaac Rabin, the Israeli prime minister that was assassinated a year before I left Israel. So this is now about a year and 9 months prior to the time that I met her. I asked her, Yitzhak Rabin, Isaac Rabin, have you heard of him? I said to her, he was the head of the Israeli army in the most glorious war of modern-day states of Israel, the Six-Day War. A war when the Jewish people occupied the most sacred place of the Jewish people on the face of this earth, the old city of Jerusalem, but more specifically, the Wailing Wall and the Temple Mount. And almost 30 years later, I said to her, another Jew, in the name of God, because this Rabin wanted to sign a peace treaty with a Palestinian, giving back land for peace, decided to assassinate him. So you tell me, I asked this woman, what's so chosen? What's so better about us, the Jews? And I added, this is the first time in Jewish history that a Jew killed the chosen leader of the Jewish nation. Now, her reply put me to shock, because she said, but it's not the first time in Jewish history that the Jews killed the chosen leader of the Jewish nation. So I asked her, what are you talking about? And she said, this is what you did to Yeshua. Now, no Israeli know Yeshua by that name, because the rabbis, they put actually a curse on his name. They took the last letter of his name, which in Hebrew is called Ayin, and Ayin literally means an eye in Hebrew. They took the Ayin, the eye out, that would put the blindness on our eyes, and they call him Yeshu, which is the initials of Imach Shmo Vezichro. Literally, it means, may his name be blotted out and shall never be remembered. So I said to her, this is what we did to whom? And for the second time she used his Hebrew name, she said, this is what you did to Yeshua. So at that point in time, I realized, oh, she's talking about this Yeshu guy. I said, listen, lady, you're a bit mixing here. I'm not mixing anything, she said. And for the third time she used his Hebrew name, she said, Yeshua was a chosen leader of the Jewish nation. He was chosen by God. And the Jewish people did not want to have him as their leader. And as she spoke that, as if a flash went before me, and instinctively, I knew inside 4 things. I knew that just like myself, this Yeshu was a Jew. I knew that just like myself, he was born and raised in Israel. Even though I knew nothing about what he taught, I've heard some time before that he gave the world the highest moral code and ethics, and I knew for a fact that he influenced the world more than any other human being ever walked the face of this earth. Now, the open-minded, secular, pluralistic kibbutz that I grew up in, they taught us about Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar and Napoleon and Hitler and all these men that truly influenced world events, but none of them was a Jew. None of them was born or raised in Israel. None of them I knew inside has influenced the world as much as this guy. In fact, I knew that this guy has influenced the world more than all the other people combined. How come? Came the question. They tell me absolutely nothing about him in Israel. Are they trying to hide something from me? Now, unlike many Jews, and I believe also unlike many Gentiles, I really wanted to know. So I started to ask this woman some questions. And somehow, every question that I asked her, the answer she gave me, at least at the place that I was at, had made sense to me. And this is just, to make a long story short, all that this woman did, she raised enough curiosity in myself to want to find out who this Jesus of Nazareth, who is this Yeshua min Nazareth was. And as I did so, God was able to open my eyes, God was able to open my heart and see wonders that I could never exist. It is actually, I received somehow, somebody gave me the Old Testament, and another person suggested that I will start reading in the prophets. And I could see that the prophets of Israel have spoken nothing but the coming of the Messiah, and everything that the prophet has spoken of actually been literally fulfilled in the birth, life, death, and resurrection of the Messiah. It is actually the reading of the Old Testament that convinced me beyond any doubt that God is real, that Yeshua is the Messiah, and it was all, thankfully, through the bold witness of a Gentile woman. I'm Omri, and this is my story.